Thank you. I'm Henry Baskin, your host for this edition of Due Process. Today we're going to be talking about divorce and people who misbehave during, before, and after. That's next right here on Due Process.
Simon Cowell, the outspoken judge from X Factor and before that American Idol. Now he's making headlines for what some say is a breach of the friendship contract, sleeping with his friend's wife. She's the wife of Cowell's good friend, Andrew Silverman. Now, Cowell and Lauren are expecting a baby. Andrew Silverman filed for divorce in July and named Cowell as a co-respondent, a major issue in the divorce proceedings. Lauren Silverman recently passed a milestone in the prenuptial agreement and could be eligible for millions.
Let's take a look at what you think.
If I were going through a divorce, I think that assets should be split up based on how much you earned and what you're worth.
They've been together for a long time. They've shared a lifetime. They've shared good moments and bad moments, making money together. So I think it should be split half and half.
Expert legal analysts say Andrew Silverman must prove he is not the baby's father in order to avoid paying years of child support. In August, the Silvermans had settled their divorce and planned to move on with their lives separately.
Thank you. We're back on Due Process. We're going to be talking about people who misbehave, what effect it has on a divorce, if at all, and if any, with two experts. We're here with Renee Gucciardo.
Hi, Henry.
Renee, thank you for coming down. I appreciate you stopping by. You are classified as a family law litigation specialist, right?
That's correct.
And you spend a great deal of your time dealing with people in divorce.
That is true.
And Connor Fair, you are an eminent divorce lawyer. Correct?
Thank you. Nice to be here, Henry.
Yeah, and nice to hear those words, right? I thought we would talk about, well, people have been saying things to me such as, hey, what's the law in Michigan? Because, like, Simon Cowell makes his best friend's wife, gets his best friend's wife pregnant, and everything is fine. Kim Kardashian is walking around with someone else's baby for months until she has a baby, but it wasn't Chris Humphrey's baby, her husband, and this was during the marriage. Isn't there a price to be paid for misbehaving like that?
Well, the court can take that into consideration when they divide property and in consideration of spousal support, but we often find it doesn't have a whole lot of meaning to judges.
Well, that's like in Michigan, we have no-fault divorce.
That's correct. Well, no-fault divorce means you don't have to show fault in order to get divorced.
Okay.
But as Connor was saying, you can consider it for property distribution and spousal support, and sometimes for custody matters if the exposure affects the children.
Well, how would it be if and it's happened, some woman walks into court, and she's pregnant, and this guy said he's a father, but she's married. I mean, what does the court do with that?
Well, there's a new law out called the Revocation of Paternity Act, and so if the alleged father, he can come in and file his own complaint or a complaint in the divorce complaint.
The alleged father, you mean like the
biological father. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes, the biological father, and he can make the allegations, or if it's he has to do it within 3 years of the child's birth, or like you said, if she's pregnant, he can make it sooner.
Really?
And then the court has to make a determination, and if the presumed father agrees with that, then they put in the judgment that this is not. They have to make a finding in the judgment that that's not the minor child as a product of the marriage.
Well, wait a minute. Now, this is really interesting. It's a relatively new law, I guess.
There's a new law. It came out in June of 2012, the Revocation of Paternity Act. And
so that means that a woman can have a baby with another man in Michigan and still be married to her husband?
Yes.
Well, who pays for the child?
Well, it depends.
Who has more money?
If the child lives within the marriage and everyone acts as though the husband is the father,
right,
then, if enough time elapses, then the biological father's rights are very limited.
Okay, but here's this guy, he's sitting there saying, Judge, I cut the umbilical cord. I said, well, you're not the husband of this woman, but it's my baby. And I guess that would come under the statute, right?
Correct.
So you have until the child is 3 years old?
You have until the child is 3 years old.
Wow. I mean,
or within 1 year, if there was an acknowledgement of paternity. If they weren't married, it would be within 1 year.
If they weren't married.
Correct.
Well, how do you feel? A pregnant woman walks in your office and she says, I want to get a divorce. Well, obviously, and she says, this is not my husband's child.
Well, you have to have a conversation. I mean, you want to sort things out. You want to look a little ahead into the future. You know, what's going to happen? What's in the best interest of the child?
Well, does she get to make the choice? Does the mother get to make the choice?
The mother can make
she
that
can?
choice. But the alleged father or the biological father can also come in and make the choice to take a stand.
Well, wait a minute. I don't disagree with the law, but how screwed up is this? I mean, now you've got one kid and two fathers and a mother, right?
Right.
Well, how is there visitation going back and forth?
I think it's something that we're going to have to sort out as we go. I mean,
who
this
passed
is the
this law?
changing face
who wrote
of
this
families.
law? Was it the Family Law Committee?
I don't know.
I mean,
I don't know.
I mean, who support? I mean, I'm not saying I don't support it because the medical evidence is really important for a child going forward. You go to the doctor and they say, "Can you give me your family's history? Do they have this, or that?" Kid sits there and says, "I don't know." I mean, that's how it used to be. He never knew who the father was because the Court of Appeals said we don't want to disrupt the family unit.
That's right.
Yeah, that happened to me, and not personally, but it happened in a case where I said, "What do you mean? You know, all I want to know is who's the father, so I can answer medical questions about whether he has this disease or that disease in the family." And the court said no at that time. So then this law gets passed, which is a good law, I guess, because it helps the child. But it sounds confusing. And then does the court in the divorce itself say, "Okay, lady, you misbehaved"? I mean, Kim Kardashian's walking around with this baby bump, and she's still married to Chris Humphries.
Well, I think in that case and in the Simon Cowell case, the court's never going to say anything to Mrs. Silverman or to Kim Kardashian because a deal is struck. I mean, the husband, Mr. Silverman, in the Simon Cowell case, it was a very strategic thing to do. He brought Simon Cowell into the case, causing extreme public embarrassment,
right.
And there was a quick settlement after that. I understood that she took less than she otherwise would have been entitled to.
Well, allegedly, she had $4 million coming in a prenuptial agreement, and they cut it down to $2 million. So the guy, bought himself out of a problem. When I don't know if does he know he's not the father? I don't even know if he's...
I think it's acknowledged by all the parties, that he's not the father.
Well, okay. Well, maybe there was no access for a long time or something like that. We used to have a law that said any child born within 9 months after the divorce was presumed to be the father of the man who divorced the woman. What happened to fault? I mean, we used to say, first of all, you couldn't get divorced if there was fault. I mean, that was years and years and years ago. But now it seems that no one seems to care.
And a lot of times they don't because, like Hunter was saying, a lot of times the cases are resolved before you go to trial. It's expensive to go to trial and it's difficult to go to trial. So the courts make you go to mediation. And
tell me about mediation. What is that? The courts send the case to
a mediator who's a trained family law attorney that helps you resolve the case. So the both parties will come with their attorney, and the mediator will attempt to get both parties to come to a settlement. And when they're trying to get a settlement, the mediator really doesn't care about fault because that gets the emotions going and everybody gets aggravated. So they try and enter into a settlement. And they say, if you want to resolve your case, we're not going to consider fault for the most part.
Okay, we're not going to...
Right.
Or
and the parties...
I'm sorry. If the case does go to trial, judges...
I never saw you apologize to opposing counsel. But go ahead.
If a case does go to trial, judges are often reluctant to say, which came first. Did the marriage break down before someone cheated, or did the cheating cause the breakdown of the marriage? Sometimes it's virtually impossible to distinguish that.
So they don't talk about... And mediation, by the way, I would say that, 95% of all cases are settled.
That's true.
In a private office or private place by a mediator.
Correct.
so that when people go to a mediator, they know what they want, try to get it, and give and get, and settle the case.
And I would think in terms of the fault issue, too, though, if one party feels particularly guilty about it, they might give a bit more, just to get out of it, or if they have a significant other, they may give up more things just to get out of
them coming into the case. But,
right.
Does the judge really care when you say, okay, I'm going to subpoena your girlfriend and have her come to go? So the girlfriend sits on the stand.
It can be terrific leverage, though.
Yeah, but she says, hey, he's my friend.
No.
I let him sleep over from time to time.
Some people have an easy time taking an oath and lying, but a lot of people don't. It's very tough to take an oath.
If you get to court.
Yeah.
Right. And I think the judges are, they're pretty savvy. They know when people are lying and when they're not. And you have to look at the situation. Does it make sense that you're just sleeping over there? And they look at, how egregious was the conduct, and when they can, if they think that the conduct is really egregious, then they can award more in terms of the property settlement.
But they only if it's tried, though. I mean, you got to really
that's true.
sort of have a trial, and that's a rare thing these days.
Well, and especially when you have children, trials can devastate relationships for years to come. It's always better to settle the case and maybe not, get your public airing of the issues. But
well, that's a good point. I mean, how do you explain to the child exactly what happened? Say, hey, Mom, I'm 5 years old. You just got divorced 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I mean, how do you explain all that?
Luckily, I haven't had to do that.
Yeah, well, what I'm saying is that's a difficult position to be in.
Absolutely.
A woman shows up in your office and she's pregnant. You say, okay, when are you guys expecting? So we are not expecting.
Right.
I'm expecting, and that's the way it is. So you have all kinds of other social and moral issues that are involved in it.
I agree, and what you're saying too as a follow-up that with this new Revocation of Paternity Act, you have 3 years to do it. So, the child could have thought that their dad was their dad for 3 years.
How does that work out? Some arbitrary age of 3.
Right.
So the kid is born. He's with his mom and dad, and some guy knocks on the door and says, "I would like to see my son or daughter." It's within 3 years.
Right.
Well, that's sort of messed up too.
I agree.
I'm sorry. The judge also has the discretion to determine what's in the best interest of the child. The judge isn't compelled to break that family up and allow
you
the
mean
biological.
in the new law,
Right.
the 3-year law?
Right, and also, Henry, the law requires that one of the things that you have to show is that the mom, the biological dad, and the presumed dad, they all openly acknowledged the fact that this child was the biological father's dad. So that's one of the elements that they have to prove in order to for them to succeed.
They all have to agree to that.
Right, they have to hold that out to the open, not only amongst themselves, but they hold that out to the open, to the public.
Right.
So that's one of the elements that you have to prove in order to prevail in your case. So I'm not sure what's going on in families where we're acknowledging that somebody else is the child's dad, but, you know.
That's interesting because I've had people walk in and say, well, my name's on the birth certificate, it must be mine, or my name's not on the birth certificate. Does that mean anything? Whose name is on the birth certificate?
It does. If they sign the acknowledgement of paternity, then...
No, just a regular birth where you have to fill out a thing and say, this is my son.
That's with a married couple. You automatically go on the birth certificate, but it's an acknowledgement of paternity if you're not married.
You do that in the hospital?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
In order to get on the birth certificate, you have to sign that.
Well, we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. We'll talk more about misbehaving when we get back here on Due Process.
Legal referrals and more information on this and other related topics are available on our website at www.dueprocess.tv. There you'll find information on today's program, helpful hints to legal issues, support materials, and lawyer referrals. You can also stream previous episodes of Due Process.
Back in Due Process, thank you so much. We're talking about the law has changed, and it's not condoning what people have done in terms of misbehavior, but I would imagine there are certain groups that oppose this legislation, like the church like other groups. Fathers for equal rights and things such as that, I would imagine.
I would think that they would, and the dads that want to be a part of the child's life, like if they didn't know, then that can be really devastating if they find out later that, like you said, somebody's coming knocking on the door. And
yeah, I mean, it seems so. I know it's before they start school, okay, but it just doesn't seem right to have some guy here. The woman has a child and she's married and she moves to Tennessee with her husband. This guy tracks her down because he's been stalking her.
Right.
And he said, I still love you, and we slept together, and that's my baby. I mean, does the court have discretion about that?
They do. And again, you have to have the open acknowledgement.
Well, between
the mom.
So the father, but can you do a DNA test or not?
Only if you start the court case. And the court will let you proceed with that. You still have to overcome the barriers.
You have to.
Right.
So the
court can still say, like if the dad wanted to remain in the child's life, the court can say it's not in the child's best interest to do this. There's a relationship. He's been raised as a child. It would be detrimental to the child's best interest to have somebody else come in and take over the role as father, and to have the dad,
right,
who he's known or she's known all of her life, just removed, because that can have devastating consequences.
On the flip side of that, I've seen cases where biological fathers, desperate to have some sort of relationship with their flesh and blood, are getting, closed off from access to the court. So this gives them an opportunity to have access to the court and establish that relationship.
Well, see, the part that bothers me, if the court can say, hey, I'm not going to let you be with your biological parent, well, I guess it's just be a father, not the mother. We know, there's
right.
no issues there. But the point is, the medical information is important. I mean, that's is true. Like really almost vital. You can't sit in a doctor's office and fill out a chart and say, I can give you half the answer, but I can't give you the rest of it. That doesn't do anybody any good. Is there any way, within that statute you talk about, that law, is there any way to compel a DNA test or compel some disclosure of something?
If you meet the criteria, you can get the judge to issue a DNA test to prove your allegation that you are the biological father.
Well, I guess you really can't force someone to give a medical history, though. I mean, that was one of the problems I had when I got thrown out of the Court of Appeals with my case. One of the problems, they kept saying we don't want to disturb the family. Well, it was 17 years. And that would be disturbing, but, in a year the child was going to be an adult and would have to answer his own questions. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. So that's why I think that law you talk about came out of a case that was floating around somewhere. This man went to the legislature and got him to pass a law. I mean, but it depends who the legislature is, too. I mean, It depends. Are they Tea Party people? Are they ultra-conservative people? The legislators, they're not going to pass a law like that. So how did this slip by? Was it during the Snyder years?
Yes, he was the one who signed the bill. So
how did he justify it? I'm just sort of curious.
I don't know what his justification is, but the way I look at it is, times are changing. I mean, the way the law used to be is the doors were, if you were married, the doors were closed.
Right.
But I think that, information is available at a rate
that's
unseen before.
What you were saying is like the right of privacy does not extend to your bedroom. Your right is there. I mean, I'm saying the government's right to know does not extend to your bedroom.
Right.
I mean, it's about the last place you can go and hide now.
That's fine. And I think, another provision, too, is if the presumed father is not his child and he doesn't want to have a relationship with the child, he can also go in and file to have his name removed from the birth certificate or the acknowledgement, or throughout in the divorce case too. He's got to make those allegations, or as soon as he finds out about it.
That's interesting. So the guy says, "Hey, wait a minute! I'm not going to pay child support. It's not my child." But there's a presumption that it is his child.
Correct.
Strong presumption.
Right.
So what does he do to get the guy who is the real father to step up to the plate? How does that happen?
You file a lawsuit.
Right. Or you can bring it up in your divorce proceedings.
You can? You can add that biological father as a party to the case?
Yeah, you can ask if you meet the criteria. As Renee was saying, they have to have been open about the fact that this child was not the issue of the marriage.
All right, so you bring in relatives to prove that and so forth and so on.
And if you meet the criteria, then the judge can order the DNA test.
Okay, and then the biological father, whether he wants to or not,
right,
is going to pay support.
If the court determines.
See, there was a case in Michigan where a father was paying support, but he wasn't living with, I think that's what caused this law to change, but he was living with another man and woman, his mother, and another man. And the guy was upset because he had no access to his child or something, and it had a lot to do with support. So I don't know if it's all based on that. The point is this. When I pick up the New York Times and see Kim Kardashian's belly, and everybody's like cheering, oh yeah, man, she's pregnant, and then we're going to show you the baby's picture, just a little peek real quick, and give me $1 million for that.
Right.
You're sort of wondering, where are we going here? What is going on there? You read the New York Post. I mean, it's getting to the point where even the Detroit News and Free Press will say, here, you want to see a shot of Mrs. Silverman? She's got the baby bump.
But, people have been cheating and having other people's babies, for all of time.
Yes.
It's just with the 24-hour news cycle and all the cable and the computer.
Right.
The stories now are taken on a pedestrian nature. It's
like
just news now.
Going the old Roman Empire days. It doesn't matter who you're sleeping with. I mean, it's just that how do we get... I've seen no one criticize Mrs. Silverman or Mr. or Mrs. Kardashian, or there's somebody else. There's always someone who's walking around pregnant. I mean, pregnant and not married, that's great. Everybody's happy with that, right?
It's accepted now.
Pregnant and sleeping with... Pregnant by your best friend, that's not... I don't know. I mean, I don't know what to advise people about our relative morality in this country. Does it have anything to do with the law? Supposedly, it's supposed to.
They should be held accountable, but I think with the court system being as busy as they are, the courts don't have the time to make them as accountable. Because in order to do that, you have to go to trial. And again, people don't have the resources, and a lot of times they don't want to go to trial, and it's resolved at mediation. But a lot of those people, they feel like they haven't received justice.
Right.
Like they want justice because they've been really wronged and they've been treated horribly and treated like a fool. And the courts don't give them that relief and that satisfaction and the punishment that they're seeking.
Well, I don't want to change the subject exactly, but it's about justice. I mean, yesterday I was in Wayne County, and this woman sitting on the bench outside, she said, I've been here 3 times. It cost me $14 to park my car. I miss a half a day of work, and I have to pay a babysitter. What's the problem? Well, my ex-husband, owes me $16,000. And I keep coming back and coming back and coming back. I said, well, this time maybe you'll get him put in jail or something's going to happen. But if you took the hundreds of thousands of people who owe child support and put them in jail, you would have to build the Renaissance Center all over again to house them. So that doesn't work. And it's one of the biggest problems we have is getting people to live up to their obligation. And these people who are spending all this money to come down and leave without a check, it's ridiculous. They say, well, come back next week. I said, I can't come back next week. I was watching this play out. And they send them to a room to the front of the court. And what do you do? What do you do with these people?
Well, it's difficult because the jails are full. And even if the judge were to put them in jail, if they're overcrowded with real criminals, so to speak, or more dangerous or violent criminals, and the people that owe something like child support or a monetary thing, they walk out the door. I've had people arrested at 8 and out the door by noon.
Right.
And then they know that they can get away with it, and then what's the motivation to pay?
Well, to bring it around full circle, so when you have a guy, as I saw in court the other day, saying, hey, it's my kid, I want my kid, he's going to pay support, right? So that's a good thing. With this new law, I mean, it's a good thing because he wants to be involved. But a court can't deny you the right, in a regular case, can't deny you the right to parent your child even if you're not paying support.
Correct.
You can't do that to them.
Yeah, they don't tie paying support with visitation.
Yeah, why not?
There are cases where I definitely think it's a good idea because people who may have means to pay support don't.
Yeah.
And,
well, I've seen judges tell people, go get a job in a car wash, pay something, and don't make any more babies. I've seen judges do that, but it's an overwhelming problem because the front of the court is inundated by 300,000 cases and things such as that.
That's right. It's a very overburdened and difficult system that doesn't give you a lot of satisfaction.
Yeah, well, we shouldn't be talking negatively about the judiciary and the court system.
Absolutely not. The judges are doing the best they can with what they have to work with.
Okay, well, listen, we're going to have to end on this note. But if you have anything else to say, send me an email. But thank you so much for coming down. I really appreciate it. Connor, I just think, Renee, that it's good for the public to know these things and what they do with it. They'll be sending you notes and letters. And
well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it. I think they're good.
Major funding for Due Process is provided by Meade Lexus of Southfield and Meade Lexus of Lakeside, offering a large selection of new and pre-owned certified premium vehicles.